I think it's afternoon, right? So good afternoon, everybody. Really thrilled to be here. I'm Nancy Mezzi. I'm the Dean of the Honors School. And before we get started, and I welcome you officially, I just want to ask that you silence your cell phones, please. So welcome to the Honors School's Spring 2023 Honors Research Conference. And I just want to let you know that the main purpose of the Honors School is to create a space for our students to explore their intellectual passion. So our high-achieving, high-ability, highly motivated students, for them to explore their intellectual passions, for them to dig deeper into asking questions, and to try to find solutions to answering those questions. And we do this largely through our curriculum, which culminates in this honors thesis or honors capstone. And we build that honors thesis and that honors capstone starting with the student's passion. And so I think that you'll probably see some of that passion coming out here today. But all of the students have to do either a creative capstone or a research thesis. And I think, I have to look at this group here. I think there's a mix here, but I think most of these are creative capstones that are going to be today. And so to complete their research projects, students have to show some passion, they have to show tenacity and perseverance and focus. And I think all of the students presenting in this session and actually throughout the day really do show all of those characteristics. And they demonstrate how we can put those characteristics into practice. Each of the students presenting have worked really closely one-on-one with faculty members, and the Honor School really doesn't function without the help and support of our faculty members. And so I just want to make sure that we honor those faculty members who have guided and mentored and supported our students throughout what for some of these students has been 2 or 3 years of work in the making. And so I just want a round of applause for our faculty members who have supported our honor students. I mean that truly, sincerely. When I teach students in the very early stages of honors thesis or capstones, the students have heard me say over and over again, you know I'm just making this up, right? Because I just don't know their discipline. So if you're in education or you're in art and design or you're in chemistry, I'm a sociology student, so a faculty member, so I make up a lot. So it's really helpful. I have to be able to pass them off to folks who really know what they're talking about, who don't say, you know, I'm making this up. So thank you to our faculty for doing that. Students are also supported by administrators and staff throughout the university, so starting from day one by admissions and enrollment management and Res Life, our provost's office, our deans, our president. So a thank you to all of the other administrators and staff. But I need to thank 2 people in particular. One is Doris Meyer, who is the assistant to the dean. She has put this entire program together. She runs our office. She really is in charge. And so, Doris, thank you for all the work that you have done. We can't do it without you. And the newest member of our team, Dean Jennifer Ross, who came in December and has really just been an incredible force in terms of helping our students focus and stay on track and making sure that they know where they're going and what they're doing, and just really being a great support system for not only for me and Doris, but also particularly for the students. So thank you, Dean Ross, for everything that you have done, continue to do, will continue to do. Really appreciate it. All right, so for our students, throughout the nation, actually, oftentimes we'll hear people talking about honor students as the cream of the crop, the best of the best, this sort of elite group. And I've tried really hard to, in my job as dean, to not use that kind of elitist kind of language. That we have so many fabulous students throughout the university, some of whom are honor students, some of whom are not. But in this instance, I'm going to very strategically and purposefully call you all, the students that are presenting today, an elite group of students. Nationwide, only 40 to 60% of our students who enter into honor schools actually finish finish those honors programs. So the fact that you have come into Monmouth University, and that is true for Monmouth as well, so the fact that you have come into Monmouth University, you've started with the honor school, you've finished the honor school, that is no small feat, and you are, both at Monmouth University and nationwide, you are an elite group of students. And so I just really want to recognize that, because a lot of people get to this phase and this stage of writing a thesis or doing a capstone project and say, I got better things to do, I don't want to do that. And they don't necessarily recognize the value of starting a really serious project and completing it. And you have done that, and you have built a whole host of skills in that process, not just what you're going to see on screen and what you're going to present today, but analytical skills, information gathering skills, creative skills, all of those things, critical thinking skills, all are wrapped up into what you have done. And so this work will take you into your graduate programs, it'll take you into your careers. You have accepted an intellectual challenge, you have persevered, and you have succeeded. And so I just want to let you know how proud I am of all of you, but on behalf of the entire university, just kudos, congratulations. Really, you should really be proud of the work that you have done. We are really proud of you. This group in particular, I have worked really closely with, so I just want to say this is just a joy for me to watch you all get to this stage. You may or may not know that the honor school dean is supported by a group of about 20 faculty members, and those faculty members form the Honors Council, and they adjudicate our highest award for thesis, which is the Honors Council Award for Thesis. It used to be called the Freed Award. We now call it the Honors Council Award for Best Thesis or Capstone. You will be getting an email, the students will be getting an email in the next week or so from Dean Ross. Please read that, open it, and consider applying for that award. So I just want to say that. So again, welcome to the 2023 Spring Honors Conference. Really thrilled to be here with you all, and really looking forward to our students and all that they are presenting. So with that, I get to introduce our first presenter. I'm on page 2 here. So Kanik Kinneret, otherwise known as Kiki, a computer science major working with Dr. Raman Lakshmanan and Dr. Jonathan Uliet. Come on up and present. And I'm going to find it here. Is this going to go right into a...
That is me.
Is this going to go right into...
Yes.
It is. I'm going to restart it. And just so everybody knows, the students have 8 minutes to present and 2 minutes Q&A, and I am the timekeeper, so I'm the mean person that sits over there and waves signs up in front. I'll warn you. I'll warn you at 6 minutes.
I'll need it. So hi, everyone. Thank you, Dean Mezzi. Thank you, Professor Lakshmanan in the back. I appreciate you guys so much, and for my friends that are here, for my family that's here. I really appreciate you guys being here and supporting me throughout this process. So a little bit what we're going to talk about today. I want to take you guys through my brain, what's been going on. We'll start with a cute little introduction. What my literature provided. All of us know we spent a long and grueling time on our lit review, researching, seeing what's out there. What did other people believe and think about this process as well? The methodology, how I actually made my presentation. We'll go through a cute short demo since this is a creative capstone. And finally, my conclusion. What did we finish with? So a little bit about who I am. I'm a computer science major, I'm a biology minor, and already 3 years ago, as a sophomore, I realized and recognized that I needed to put my disciplines together. I love computers, I love coding, I love the analytical purpose of computers and what they offer to us, but I also love biology. I love knowing the functions of our bodies, what's happening, proteins, how everything is being built and made, and what the processes actually are. So this project came out of really COVID. I love computers, I love biology, and those are two things that half of it we could do in person. We could do computers, we could do biology in person. We can't do computers in person as much. We need to be able to mend them together. And we realized during COVID-19 pandemic that our teachers weren't, or we as students also, we weren't so equipped to transition into this online learning, into not being in person anymore. So I decided that I'm going to pull my computer science, my biology, and my piece of education together and create an application that's going to serve that purpose, that's going to help with our education in the STEM discipline. So what did the literature provide? When I actually researched, when we went into and dug into what actually went on, what did it tell me? It showed us that in the 21st century, we have to create this new approach to education. We have to deal with education in a new way. We're a little bit getting over the brick and mortar schools. We're realizing that online education is possible. It might not be ideal, but it's a possibility now. So in our 21st century, how are we transitioning from the education practices that we know into this new world of technology? How do we embrace this technology? A few of the factors that influence that official integration and make that transition possible is our teachers, is our professors, is our administration. We need to make sure that our teachers are aware of technology, that they embrace it, and that the technology that we decide to implement into our classroom and into our world is embraced with both hands, with open arms, with clean, happy, huge arms. Because otherwise, if as students we recognize that our teachers or administrators aren't so into the technology, or they don't know how to process Zoom or Google Classroom or Canva or eCampus, it makes it very hard on the student, because that's what we rely on, that's what we depend on. We're on our computers, we're on our phones, we're on our laptops. It's what we use, it's what we need. Our teachers need to catch up. A few of the advantages of having these mobile applications is that there's more accessibility. Our students who are learning online or even learning in person, since thank God we transitioned more or less back into full-time in person, what happens if they're not a visual learner? What happens if they're an audio learner? What happens if they're a hands-on learner? We couldn't do hands-on for a long time. We missed almost 2 years worth of hands-on work. So with mobile applications, with technology integrated into our education, it's a supplementary aspect of education that our students can actually use and work and feel like they're taking charge of their education. Some of the challenges, though, that arise is that what happens if we're not equipped? What happens if our mobile application is good for iOS, but it's not good for Android? What happens if it's good for Mac, but not for Windows? What happens if our third graders don't have iPhones and we're saying that we want a mobile application? It needs to be accessible to all of our users. It needs to be something that teachers know how to use, students know how to use, and we're ready to use them. So a little bit about the methodology. How did this project come to be? What did I use? So this is a creative capstone. This is a project that I created, and it is a mobile iOS app, so it's built for iPhones. Xcode is the IDE, the integrated development environment that iOS developers use, and the language that I used is Swift. So a lot of you guys might know Python and Java and languages like that, but specifically for iOS, Swift is our language that we use. SpriteKit and GameKit are both frameworks that are used often inside games, and the purpose of having them is that they help specifically with the gestures. So I don't know if you guys realize, but how does your phone recognize when it needs to tap, when it needs to move, when you tap on the top of the screen, or when you scroll, or if you do a long tap? All of those different pieces are things that, as developers, we need to think about. We need to include in our code. If it's not, the code will crash. So what did I actually create? What was my actual project? We'll start the demo in a second, but if you guys remember, back in the 80s, so a long time ago, there was this game called Asteroids. Asteroids is this video game back in the day where there was this rocket, and that rocket would zap different asteroids. So the rocket is floating through space, and an asteroid would come. If an asteroid hit it, it would combust, and you'd have to restart. I used that same application, and I just sort of shifted it over into the STEM. So instead of having a rocket, you now all of a sudden have a scientist. A scientist is floating through space or through his lab, whichever, and he is zapping different amino acids. So again, part of the education component is that we wanted to create a fun, interactive, and user-friendly technology to be used to supplement education in STEM. So the actual application, this is a screen recording of my phone. You're able to download these apps onto your phone. We have a little scientist in the center who is spinning around. So those are gestures that I had to use inside my framework, that I had to say on tap, on screen, on turn, on tumble. And you're able to, you see him now, he is zapping these different amino acid components and proteins. If you guys know our amino acids, I don't know how many biochemistry people we have here, but I'm seeing no's from the audience. It's fine, no problem. But we have about 20 amino acids, and each one of them has a different characteristic or a different function. Some of them are polar, some of them are non-polar, some of them are positively charged, negatively charged, and it's hard for the student to recognize them. So through this app, you're able to get used to the structure, you're able to have this fun and user-friendly technology that you're able to, just expose yourself to these amino acids and see them. So you see that whenever he gets hit by an amino acid, you have to restart the game, but you're able to continue moving on. I really wanted you guys to see how this game works. So you see the zapping work, you see the different gestures that are occurring. Okay, so what was the purpose of this project? What were we doing? We wanted to integrate a supplemental education component to STEM. That we have these students, you're telling them, okay, we have glycine, make it work. That is our, what are the characteristics of it? What does it actually do? How does it function? What process does it have inside the body? What function does it have inside of the body? And we were able to do that. We're able to create this application that students are exposed to the amino acids, that they're able to see their different characteristics, their different functions, their different values. And it's a passive way of just exposing yourself to the different amino acids. So when you come to the quiz or to the exam, to the science final, you're able to say, I remember this one. I remember seeing a hydrogen. I remember seeing a carboxyl, a carbonyl. That means that it's positively charged. That means that's negatively charged. That means that's polar or non-polar. In the future, since this is an application that with my second reader, with Dr. Ouellette, he wanted to use it for his class, for his students, for his biochemistry 395 class. And so another component that we would add is maybe a quiz function, that once you zap one of the amino acids, a pop-up will come up and you're able to say, oh, I think that this is polar based off of the structure. And then students are getting that exact feedback, that quick feedback, and they're able to really use it in a better format. And so that's all. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for participating. So any questions? Yes, So, Dean?
Yeah, so Kiki, I love the project. I wish I played games, but I didn't. I don't remember. But I'm just sort of wondering, how do you decide amino acids as opposed to any other sort of biology kind of, or biochemistry kind of thing?
So, wonderful question. So really, as I was going through the literature, as you know, one of the other applications that we were even thinking of making is an augmented reality application. So we wanted to create a true virtual lab that students, since we weren't allowed to go into our labs for 2 years, research halted for 2 years, we wanted to create this virtual space. Augmented reality is extremely specific and very hard to do and a little bit daunting. So instead, what was the purpose of my actual thesis? What did I want to accomplish? It was an app for education, for STEM education, to help expose our students and my peers, my friends, me even, to different components of biology. Throughout the literature, there were other applications that are made. There's almost 600,000 educational applications out there. That's a lot of educational applications. And with amino acids specifically, there's a lot of factors to it, whether they're different characteristics. And a bottom line comes down to the actual structure of it. If you're able to recognize that a hydrogen means that it will be more polar, or if a an amine group will add to its acidity, then you're able to understand greater topics in our in biology, in biochemistry, since amino acids really are the building blocks of our proteins, of what makes up our entire bodies in life. What's up, Kiara? So, wonderful question. So, I want to implement that one extra piece, that quiz piece, since I think that even though passively as you're brushing your teeth, you're able to play this game, I think that students will really benefit, and the literature even provided and stated that students need that challenge. And some applications even had a leaderboard, or you're able to join a class and you're able to play with your classmates. So once I have one of those implementations in, I think it would be really helpful. Right now, if you have your phone on you, I have my laptop. I could download it onto your phone. But for it to be placed onto the Apple account takes a little bit more. But thank you for asking. I'll let you know when it does.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So our next presenter is, and by the way, the reason that the students have to stand behind her is because we're connected to that, thank you, projector. Holy cow, that wasn't coming out. It's my lunchtime. Thank you, Mary. The camera, so it's connected to there so we can hear. All right, so our next presenter is Sarah Curtis, an English and creative writing major working under the support of Dr. Mihaela Muskulik. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. For my thesis, I was going to present on social anxiety, which includes the fear of public speaking because I have that, and so I'm pretty nervous right now. But I want to be remembered as more than the girl with anxiety, so I chose a thesis project I'm much more excited about. When I was in high school, I wrote and published 2 novels and a poetry collection. My books were something I was proud to accomplish then, and I still am. It's just that one thing I learned in my studies as an English major is that no piece of writing, even if it is published, is ever complete thanks to the process known as revision. So I set out to return to Raindrops, the poetry collection that I wrote in high school, and I wanted to majorly revise 15 of the poems I wrote. For my research and literature review, I inquired to discover the 5 W's. What is the purpose of revision? What does the revision process involve? What do we revise toward from poem to poem? What are some specific revision strategies and techniques? And what are some of the most impactful elements of craft to consider in revision? So I hunted for as much information as I could possibly find on poetry and poetry revision and poetic craft from famous poets and prestigious scholars, and sought to apply those findings to my high school poetry. You may be wondering, why is this important? Why would you return to something that's already been published and redo it entirely? Well, revision is essential in writing because without revision, pieces are stagnant. Writing a poem, that's the simple part. You put your ideas onto a page, you plant a seed, but with any seed planted, you really have to nourish it for the plant to grow. So revision is nourishing, it's gardening a poem so it can grow to reach its fullest potential. Revision is something poets like to think of as a process of re-envisioning a poem. It's not editing, changing a word or two. It's an attempt to craft a poem much more cultivated than the original. And so I enhanced my ideas, my verb choices, my language use. I made each word and each line ending intentional, making sure to incorporate effective enjambment, or when a line doesn't end with a complete thought, so you have to rush to the next line. Oops, it's moving around. When a line doesn't end with a complete thought, so you have to rush to the next line to relieve that suspense. I also sought to make rhymes in places other than end rhyme, creating music by including words that start with the same letter or words that have the same sound, craft devices known as alliteration, consonance, and eternal rhyme. So here's one example of the revision process that all my poems underwent. I started with the original, re-envisioned it, and then tweaked it a little more in a second round of revision to strengthen the new images, music, and language, a process that all 15 of my poems encountered. The original reads, "When it rains, it pours. Raindrops so small, smother, flood, Swim to stay afloat, the world is pulling down. No way out, shout and cry. Why? Raindrops so small, smother, flood, drown. I really love this poem, but something I learned in this process is that sometimes you have to do what writers call kill your darlings, or let go of something you love for the sake of making that something better. And by severing my attachment to the original poem, I was able to create Worried, Worms Can't Swim, a poem much more hearty and majestic and musical than the original, but it still represents the original in the sense that it's a poem about the might of small raindrops. Sopping dirt, muddied earth, brown water, floods earth's empty pockets, potholes in asphalt, holy terrain. Drowned elder dandelions, potential wishes washed away. Tiny bits of flotsam float down streets' gray rivers to thirsty sewage drains. Trickle, trickle, rush, rush raindrops, gracing gutters, window washing, caressing flesh. Dainty droplets become noxious, tearing leaves from trees, gifting words pools, sinking, pummeling, blades of grass, nature against nature, never stood a chance. As you can see and hear, this poem became something so much bigger than the original. It's far more complex, it has a lot more images, and it's more dynamic musically, while still representing the original. In the original poem here, the meaning is very unclear. Once loved, then used, now it is trashed. Though a base and a roof, this house has no walls. A chapter rewritten, even reread, the book has been closed and the story is dead. What is the subject here? Is it a house? Is it a book? It's very unclear. It's meant to be metaphorical. But I did like the mystery and the idea of something abandoned. So I crafted the poem Abandoned to be a bit more like a riddle, as the first one was, but in this poem you'll actually learn what the meaning is, what the subject is, a book. Loved, used, broken, trashed, nobody is allured by her anymore. Scribbled out words, torn pages, musty, she must be lonesome, sedentary on a shelf. Dusty, does she desire someone to brush her off? Long for someone to touch her busted spine? Though pined, does she still aspire to be in someone's mind again? This revision is one of my favorites. And you don't have to be beautiful. I had a good base commenting on society and beauty standards and how there's a cookie cutter that molds a certain ideal of beauty, but it was a bit bland, I can admit. Pretty is perfect, pretty is preset. Beauty isn't molded, beauty is real. So I took that cookie cutter concept and elevated the diction or word choice to create gingerbread mankind. Cookie cutter says, pretty is skinny, pretty is poreless, porcelain, perfect. Pow, 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 it constantly crashes down. Ow, ouch, skin's not as malleable as dough. That muddle cuts confidence, estranges egos, mangles esteem, fabricates internal hate because bodies only bake if they make it to the tray, where they can lay and look the same as all the others. Wabi-sabi is a wonderful Japanese philosophy, appreciating transience and adoring imperfection. When I bake gingerbread men, the imperfect ones, with legs that look like they've had too many rendezvous, with rolling pins and cookies where an excessive amount of icing plopped out the piping bag, the same frosting that glues gumdrops in clumsily curvy lines, or reattaches limbs broken off by the bake are so beautiful, they beat all the perfect ones. So these are just a few of the revisions I did, but all 15 of my poems underwent a semester's worth of tweaking and re-envisioning. I am happy with the poems that I wrote in high school because I wrote them with what I knew about poetry then. But in the 4 years since then, I have grown to know so much more about poetry, and I was able to use my new knowledge to help my poems flourish. I turned stick figure drawings into magnificent paintings, seeds into grand oak trees, poems I can really be proud of. That is the art of revision. And if I never considered revision, if I left my poems as I wrote them in high school, then this growth, these transformations would not have been possible. Just like this project would not have been possible without the help of Dr. Moskaliuk, I'm so grateful for your guidance throughout this project and for teaching me so much about poetry, just as I'm so thankful for the Honor School for allowing me to get creative and really see where I could take my poems. And thank you, audience, for listening. That concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
The creative process is exceptionally challenging, especially with revising and study writing for a long time. And one of my professors, because I'm sure you've heard the phrase, it's killing your darlings, which means you've written this beautiful line
Right. Well, I have to say, thanks to my experience in Dr. M's classes, I was used to like knowing that revision isn't something that, oh, you change a word and then you're done revising. So I knew like if you really want to make your poems better, if you want to make your writing better, then you have to be willing to let go of the original, even if that means getting rid of a line or an idea you love so much, because you can really make that idea better. So for this process, I didn't find it that hard to let go, especially because I have all the originals saved and they were published in the book, so if I ever wanted to see the originals, I could just go back to them. But I had so much fun, and there isn't a single poem that I would choose the original over the revision, because I really got to make them flourish in revision.
Just a quick question. So first of all, I'm glad that you didn't pick a thesis topic on public speaking, because we would have missed out on all of this. I mean, just really.
Thank
really
you.
wonderful work. So,
Thank you.
And I love some of the metaphors that you use. I guess that's what you learn in creative
Right.
writing classes. So, and I was just wondering, so are you going to try to publish these as well? Is there?
That's a great question. So for my book, there was originally 60 poems, and these were poems that I felt all needed so much work, but upon reading all the originals, I thought, wow, I learned so much, I could apply what I learned to every poem. So for this project, in my literature review, I learned so much more about poetry and really enhanced what I learned as a creative writing student. So now I would love to return to the other poems and just read them all, and it would be amazing to do a before and after, publish a new collection, and so you could see the difference between the originals and the revised ones. Yes.
So when you revise a poem,
Mhm.
would you say you revise it, that is, you make choices based on flashes of inspiration?
Right.
Or are there rules or principles that, you either employ or taught or learn
Mhm.
that can help you do that?
Right. So one thing I learned in my literature review is that if you go into a revision just thinking, oh, I just want to make the poem better, it can be pretty daunting because you don't know where you're going to go. That's not really an action plan. So with revision, it's great to focus on something like, I want to make the verb choices better. I want to make the images better. You pick something and then that sparks inspiration and you run with it from there. That's the process I did for each of my poems. Yes. Hi.
In our composition and academic writing classes at Monmouth, we have all the Monmouth students here hopefully remember, there's a big emphasis on revision as being a necessary part of the writing process, and as the motivation for revision being to learn something new as you're revising, rather than just to tweak things and improve it, and, fix things. So
Right.
did you feel like you gained new insights from revising the original poems? Sort of found new ways to express ideas that weren't even there?
Yes, definitely. Looking at my revisions after completing this project, I was shocked of how far they came from the originals because they really were so much more dynamic. And the revision process is something I would definitely agree is essential, because I think when you write the idea and you get your words onto a page and you create the first draft, it's easy to say, okay, I did it, I wrote a poem, it's done. But when you explore revision, you really explore so many new potentials and ideas that you might not have thought of when you first wrote that original poem. So it's definitely a process that should be required in the revision process, and I know that it is at all my creative writing classes that I took. Revision was a necessary component of the class.
Sarah, thank you so much. Really
Thank you. Thank you.
And you did a really nice job public speaking, so you can take that off of your list of things you can't do. You terrific job. Darika, you have two things. Which do you want me to pull them both up?
It's embedded into it, so if it works out, fine.
It's embedded into here?
Yeah.
Okay. If not, we can. All right. So our third presenter is Darika Lara Rodriguez, design and animation with a focus on graphic and interactive design, working with Professor Voba Koenig.
Sorry. Hello. So, hello everyone. My name is Darika Lara Rodriguez, and I am presenting on habitat loss caused by climate change. As we all know, climate change affects each and every single one of us, and that means that because of that, we tend to forget as well that there are other people that live with us too, not the peoples, but the animals. And I wanted to focus on that specifically. And as we know, climate change can impact different types of natural disasters and make them more severe and make them more frequent. So one of the natural disasters that I decided to focus on was wildfires in specific. As we know, climate change can also be interchangeably used with global warming. And because of that, that means the temperatures are starting to rise all around the planet, and wildfires are becoming more susceptible, and they're easily set off. And so one of the events that really made me think about what I wanted to do for my creative capstone was the 2019-2020 Australian bushfire season, where I was able to see how many animals had to be relocated or even perished during this. And because of that, I decided to focus my creative capstone specifically in wildfires, but in the fox community. And I thought the best medium to do this was creating a 3D animation. So here's the lovely program that I used, Maya, which I spent most of my time working on, as well as Adobe After Effects for the ending. And I will run through how I created my 3D animation in regards to wildfires, foxes, and the loss of habitat. So my animation process started, number one, with modeling and rigging, then the storyboard, and then I started animating, and finally the rendering and final touches. Now, typically the storyboard and animation, it's done first before the modeling and rigging. I just happen to have switched them in my process. And this is a nice timeline to show you how long it took for each individual aspect that I worked on. And as you can tell, the modeling and rigging was the one that really took the most as I started to get used to the program and actually work with it, as it was a new program I had never used before as a graphic designer. So the first thing that I worked on was my modeling and rigging. Modeling is when I was digitally sculpting out the things that I needed to do, like the fox and even the environment. And the rigging is specifically for the fox, as is the construction of the skeleton and it's the backbone, so that I'm able to move the controls of the fox. So this was where it all started, back in September of 2021, the sketch of a fox. I had a nice little side and front view of it. And then I was able to design it, and this is the texture that's actually on it that had to be spread out, that then got molded into it. So it looks a bit weird there, but it's okay. Here's the rig, so you can actually tell the different controls that you have, where the ears can move, the tail can move, and the different legs. And afterwards, this was weight painting, and it only happens for things that have rigs, so in this case, the fox. Nothing else was weight painted, so it's when the joints, you have to move them, and there's some deformities that happen, so you want to make sure that it is okay. And then self-explanatory, the second part was my storyboard, the sequence of drawing representing the shots that were planned. And on the left side, you can see, I think that's my first storyboard I ever created for this piece. And there were many revisions that had to be done afterwards because I got more feedback from my classmates, from my professor, and taking everything into consideration, I was able to then create the final storyboard. And after that, I got to the fun part for most of it, which was animating. So I took everything together and I started to actually piece it all and started to move my fox and make it seem as if, the storyboard. And I started to test out key poses to make sure my fox was actually moving correctly and how I wanted him to work. So, did it play? Oh, sorry, folks. No, it didn't play. It's okay. And after I finished animating, the last thing that I worked on was rendering and the final touches. Now, rendering can take a really long time, and it's the process of a computer taking all that information that I have, the material, the lighting, and all the polygons, and it calculates to a final result, so it exports it as one single frame. And so, as it takes a long time, I have some facts about rendering, and that also is a little math problem for you guys. I know we love math. So, one frame for me took about 4 to 7 minutes, so it's a really long time. And for my animation, 24 frames is only 1 second of my animation. So that meant if my animation is about 1 minute and 32 seconds, how long did it take to render? It was a really long time. I have the answer for you guys. We don't have to do the math. It took about 9 days to render the whole thing just for 1 minute and 32 seconds of my animation. But luckily, that was only if it was on one computer. at my disposal, I had about, I think the max that I've ever done was 25 computers all running at the same time so that that number was reduced, because clearly I was not going to wait 9 days for this, as I had to revise and edit it. And now I get to show you all my lovely animation that I worked on for rendered in less than 9 days. And I'd like to thank my professor and advisor who helped me throughout this whole entire process back from September 2021 all the way now to April 2023. And my friends and family who also assisted me in this long journey. And hopefully the sound works. Here it is. And that concludes the end of my presentation. Any questions?
That was amazing.
Thank you.
What challenges and setbacks did you have that you weren't anticipating?
The program. Maya was very complicated, and sometimes I did not know what I needed to do because there's so many things that I would have to click on, and then I would forget them afterwards. As you know, it took a long time, so I had to tweak it. There was a point where a third fox would appear at times randomly, so I would think that was the ghost of the second fox, but I don't know. So that was another issue that would happen at times that I still don't know the answer to. But luckily it didn't appear, so it's okay now. Yes.
How did you go about picking the music that went back in the animation?
So for the music, I actually composed it for this piece. So I play the piano, and I wanted to add to that as well. Apart from creating the animation, I tried to create some music and see how that would work. And so that was my attempt at trying to look at the screen and be like, okay, what could possibly work, and trying to fit it with it. So.
And I'm not going to ask you if the fox really died at the end, because we had conversations about this, and in my mind, it was just sleeping. So I'll tell you that right up front.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so you sort of mentioned it a little bit, I know you've written it, but I was just wondering why you chose a fox as opposed to any other animal.
So the reason I chose a fox was I feel like I've been starting to see more foxes, even specifically in my neighborhood, that I never would have really seen. Like, I've heard of foxes, yes, I've seen the images, but I was like, there's something that I don't really see. Like deers, they sometimes happen to pass by. But I remember walking through the park, and I was like, that's a fox. I was like, I've never seen a fox like in real life before, and that really inspired me, like, why am I now seeing them now? And even this past year, a fox has appeared in my neighborhood, and I started to question, why are they now appearing? And so I decided in my lit review to go focus in on that specifically and find out what is happening. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Are you going to enter this into a film festival? That was a serious question. It wasn't rhetorical, Darika. Let me encourage you to do that and to work with your first reader to do that. It's exquisite. All right. So our next presenter is Giverny Reese, a business administration, marketing, and management student working with Dr. Scott Jeffrey and Dr. Anna Sadakonova. I think I got that right.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I know Dr. Jeffrey is here, but Professor Sadovnikova couldn't make it, but they've both been a great help in helping me complete my project, which I'm happy to share with you. So for my project, as a business student, but also someone who's interested in sustainability, I wanted to tackle the problem of a lack of information about how to incorporate eco-conscious actions into your everyday life. When I was looking it up, it started in my class, which was climate science, my freshman year, and Dr. Duckett was the professor, and we talked a lot about how people often don't have the tools to incorporate those, sustainable actions. They don't know what to incorporate. So my goal with Grow Green is how to incorporate better buying habits, more sustainable buying habits. So with conscious consumption, which is just about being more conscious about what you're consuming. Okay. Oh goodness, I've already broken it. Okay, here we go. Sustainability is our future. Our resources are finite. We really need to create purchase alternative products made of alternative materials to allow our environment to regenerate the resources that we've already used up. Okay, perfect. And what we buy is a big part of that. So our products consumption for housing, food, and transportation make up 70% of ecological impact in most categories. If you think about it, the clothes you buy today, you ate food that you bought today, buy cars, our consumption has to do with a lot of our impact. Okay. So just by a show of hands real quick, how many people here think about their impact, carbon, water, whatever it may be, when they go shopping at the grocery store? Okay, wow. I mean, as honors school students, I'm happy for that, to see that show of hands. But for the most part, people don't really think about that, unfortunately. And, when you think, for those who raise their hand, when you think about carbon impact or your impact on the environment when you shop, how do you do it? Do you just buy, the label that says 100% natural, something like that? Or do you read all the ingredients? Or do you look up the products? There's a lot of different ways that people shop. But most people who do shop or try and shop green, they mostly just read the labels that say 100% natural and green. And most of those labels, unfortunately, are greenwashed, where companies just put natural or sustainable on there, and there's no accountability to those words that they use. So, a company, even if you tried to sue them and say this product isn't sustainable, there's nothing that regulates them. So they're allowed to do as they please, and so they do to try and trick you into buying non-eco-friendly products. Okay. So then, when doing my research, I also found out that sustainability and sustainability literature that's commonly published, especially in like magazines and things like that, that the average consumer would likely read, actually has a demographic. It's women who are educated, meaning that they hold a college degree or higher, who are in the middle class and live near urban areas. Okay, then that's great, but what about everyone else? What about the common, average person who's going to Stop and Shop and, may not have a college degree or may have a college degree or might be male or might not be middle class or might not live near an urban area? What about all those other people who need the tools to be able to figure out how their purchases impact the environment and have an interest in doing so? That's why I made Grow Green. So what is it? As stated before, housing, food, and transportation account for 70% of eco-impact. Okay. So how are we going to lower that if most of the demographic or most of the people aren't the target demographic for all of this sustainability data and tools? For the most part, if people can't find the answers, they just stop looking. Can you imagine if every time you went to the grocery store, you had to have, look through tons of articles to see the ingredients and see if your product's sustainable or healthy for you? You would either leave with no groceries, or you would say, oh, you know what, I'll try that next time, and just stop what you're doing, stop looking them up. And that's what a lot of people do is, they start trying to be sustainable and then it's really hard. So my goal with this app is to bridge the informational gap across all groups, whether or not they fall into that target demographic of a lot of literature, which is women who are educated and things like that. Okay. So unfortunately, I am not as skilled as some of the other people here, and I was not able to actually code an app, but I have something to me that's similar enough in Figma, which is an app mock-up software. I made mock-ups of what some of the screens in Grow Green, the application, would look like. So starting off on the left-hand side, you see at the front, it says, "Hi, Climate Champion," at the top, rather, time to save the world. So in the app, there'll be different levels that people can achieve, starting with climate, like eco-environmentalist, climate champion, sustainability savior, things like that, going up to hopefully entice people to reach a higher level of achievement within the app and a better impact in the environment. You have quick access buttons at the top for coupons, top brands. It'll be a scrolling where people can see what we as a company, Grow Green, categorizes as like the best top brands, most sustainable top brands. There'll be a little factoid, which hopefully will entice people to be more environmentally conscious. That little one, I'm not sure if you can read it, it's a bit light, but it says that changing to an Energy Star washer saves enough water in 1 year as you can drink in your entire life. So just thinking about that, how one small change, in the type of washer you buy can make such a big impact. And then it also, at the bottom, has new products and things like that. You can go by category if you're just looking at products, or you can search individual if you're at the grocery store and want to look at the best laundry detergent, the most sustainable laundry detergent. And then through that, you can also refine that further by price high to low, or sort by price high to low, refine it by price, and if you're looking for dye-free, fragrance-free, whatever it may be, and then also by the Grow Green rating, which is based on the impact to both people and the environment of all of the ingredients in that item that you're looking at. So then further, you have the item details, where it gives you a description of the item, it tells you the ingredients, and then people will also be able to look at those ingredients and see each ingredient's impact on the environment or to people's health, reviews which would be sourced from the internet as well, and then people can add the product to their favorites by clicking the heart button at the top, which would then bring them to the next screen if they clicked on it of the favorite products, where people can keep a tally of what their favorite products are so that they can buy them again. And then also we would have a coupon section which says your favorite save the earth and your wallet, rather, which would be open sourced from manufacturers' coupons in the beginning, but hopefully as the company grows, allow exclusive coupons as well. So then that would drive more consumers to the app who would come for the savings, but save for the climate change, or positive climate impact, rather. And then it would also give a carbon footprint tracker as well, where people can understand their impact, because going on, that is one of the biggest causes for resistance amongst consumers, is that they think that going green is intimidating. They think that they have, once they start, it's a big commitment, and then that's, they, just get concerned about the impact to them. Not everyone, they don't want to give up their favorite things. So that is Grow Green. Time to go green with Grow Green. Thank you guys for your attention today.
Is
Yes.
everyone on board with you inside your household?
My sister is. My parents do put, they're not, I wouldn't say a full eco warrior, but they're definitely environmentally conscious. So yes, yes, they are.
Because it could be, it's all about discipline, right?
Yes.
So if everybody's not on board and you're trying to walk that line, and hey, I'm trying to do this, I want to live a better life,
Yeah.
I want to preserve our earth, growth, evolve, that's what life is about, evolve. So that's, this is amazing, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. But yeah, for the most part, my family's on board, and you're right. As you said, it's hard, especially as one person. But hopefully, having an application where people can make small changes. It's not always about the big changes. I think that's another thing people get caught up in. They think they have to radically change their whole lifestyle, but it's, the small impacts that accumulate to a larger impact in the end. Oh, Dr. Jeffrey, and then I'll go to you. Yeah.
I have a question though. How will, or is there a plan to get feedback to producers about what they should be doing to get better, to attract consumers better?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, especially as the app catches on, I think that's something that producers rather, would see that the consumer preferences have shifted into more sustainable products. You see it now with some producers like Tide. They just released recently like an all-natural version of Tide, which is plant-based version of Tide, which is still in a plastic bottle. It's only 65% natural, which is another word that's, questionable origins and makeup. So, hopefully we would love to, be able to bridge that with producers as well, bridge a gap and help them understand that the consumer preferences have shifted and be able to, create better products overall too. And then have all the apps and products in Grow Green end up being, sustainable. That would be great. Did you have any questions?
Yeah, I think this is it. Someone back there?
Sorry.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Do you think that with all the greenwashing that you mentioned that's out there, would it be important for an app like this for you to have sponsorships and endorsements from really reputable environmental organizations like Sierra Club or something, so people know that they can trust the information you're providing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a big part, is establishing that trust, as you said. So having other associations, back up and support this application as well, and also possibly like even advertise it to, their members that this is something that you can trust, would definitely be a big part of, furthering the market for it as well. And then just overall creating a better sense of trust with consumers so that they know that that's a place that they can go where they're not going to just get greenwashed products. They're going to get the real deal.
This is a fabulous project.
Oh.
So I'm going to move us
Oh, yeah,
along.
yeah, yeah. Thank you.
As I get up here, wondering whether you had looked at the PETA app that has the little bunnies that, I don't know if you've seen it, but so as you're walking through the grocery store, you can scan in something and it'll tell you whether it's tested, whether the product's tested on animals. So it made me think about this. And then the other thing was, is there a social piece to it where, as I'm looking at all these products, I can say, instead of buying this in a plastic bottle, you can actually go buy, a different type of detergent that's actually on a sheet and it doesn't have any plastic bottles and stuff like that. And I just encourage you all to go vegan, because that will take care of a lot of this issue and make your app a whole lot easier. So just got to do my shameless plugs when I got the chance here. So our last presenter for this session, and we have 2 more sessions after this, so invite you to stick around, but is Mary Schold talking about, well, you can tell them what you're talking about. Mary is an English and elementary education student working with Dr. Carly Rizzuto. And Mary, I hear that you wanted to walk around, but you got to stick by the, sorry about that. If she's standing still, it's my fault, so thanks, Mary. Go ahead.
Hello, everybody. My name, as Dr. Mezzi said, is Mary Schold, and I'm going to be presenting on social emotional learning and teaching it in the classroom through children's literature. So before we begin, I just want to define what social emotional learning is for everybody, because unless you're in the education field, you might not know what it is. So it's defined as these 5 main competencies here you'll see in bold. So it involves skills such as self-awareness skills, which is in identifying emotions, self-management, which could involve developing healthy coping mechanisms, social awareness, developing things like empathy, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. And in my project, I specifically hone in on anxiety, stress, depression, and self-esteem, because social emotional learning has just such a big field that you kind of need to narrow it down a little bit to be very specific. So when I first learned about social emotional learning in my classroom, I knew right away that it was something I was passionate about. I really wanted to research further because I realized it was something that I could implement in my classrooms, and it was something that I felt like could really make a change within our future generations. So in doing the literature review, I identified 4 main themes. And the first thing was that there's an incredibly increased need for SEL now more than ever. The World Health Organization identifies 1 in 7 children aged 10 to 19 who experience mental health disorders in some capacity. That's a crazy high number considering so many people even go diagnosed, so it could even be higher than that. The idea behind teaching social emotional learning is to have a universal approach, meaning that you teach all the students in the classroom, not just one specific student who might be struggling with something, but you're providing that skill set to everybody in the classroom. This works as a preventative measure so that before students are at higher risk factors as they go into adolescence, they already have like a toolkit or a skill set that they can go into those challenges with those skills. It's also important to be culturally competent, so students feel welcome and accepted in the classroom to encourage further social emotional learning. And I wanted to define bibliotherapy, which was one of the main terms that I found, which is using children's books to support SEL needs. With that idea of bibliotherapy, I take my project and promote the idea of using children's books within the classroom to teach SEL. There's 4 really major benefits with that, and it's that it uses existing curriculum. We're not implementing a new subject, we're using existing practices that are already in the classroom and using SEL books to incorporate it. So this allows you to have activities and discussion, reading workshops, have writing prompts based on it, have guided readings with the teacher, and they can really facilitate that conversation. And it also provides the students with an opportunity to learn from other perspectives. So in my project, what I did was I developed a critical framework for analyzing social emotional learning books. So I made a rubric that I have here, my prop, and I'll pull it up later, but it basically takes standards and criteria that I developed based on the literature of how to identify if a book would be a good, like, high-quality SEL book. I also developed an inventory of literature because I realized that there was a severe lack of lists of books, whether published online or what it may be, that was evidence-based. So I tried to use the literature review and evidence-based to create the rubric and then match books that could go into those inventory and then categorize them. I also connected them to the NJ standards because as public school teachers, you have to teach NJ standards in the classroom, so I wanted to make sure that that connection was there so teachers could still successfully implement it in their classroom. And I put this all into a website, so we're gonna look at that later. So 4 of the main things within the rubric is targeting at least one of the SEL competencies that I talked about in the beginning, so self-awareness, self-management, having an honest and positive representation of mental health, meaning it's not like romanticizing mental health disorders, and it's realistic but also positive, showing signs of hope. It has dynamic characters who, 1, overcome challenges, and 2, show more than one characteristic. So for example, if it's about a child with depression, that's not who they are, that's not all they are, but that they show other characteristics too and other interests. And it also provides an opportunity for activity-based questions. And then I just have a couple notes about an SEL library. Since one book can't cover everything, you want to make sure that your SEL library is also fully comprehensive, meaning it targets all of the competencies, it's inclusive, and includes a wide range of mental health struggles and SEL skills. So here's just a quick example of how I connected the state standard to the SEL competency. So for example, one of the state standards is to, by the end of grade 2, explain what being well means and identify self-care practices that support wellness. So I connected this to self-management and identifying one's emotions. So this is a little bit one of the clearer connections. It's pretty clear how you connect those two. But the state doesn't have specific SEL standards, so it's important to make those connections between the two. And if you want, you can pull it up on your phone, but I'm going to pull it up on the screen, so no need. And I will pull it up now. OK. Here's my website. So you have the cover page that shows the title. You can see up top, all the different tabs. We have an About tab, the literature review, which I'm going to stop at real quick. So the literature review highlights the main themes, which I went through earlier, but it's in a very user-friendly way that everybody can work through it. And I do the same thing for the SEL competencies and knowing what skills that falls under. The difference between this here and what the nonprofit organization that I pulled the competencies from, the difference is that I specifically honed it in on anxiety, stress, depression, and self-esteem. And I pulled the specific skills under each. So when you go to my project tab, there are 5 main parts, and I'm going to go through them a little bit with you. Just a quick preview. It's a lot, so I'm going to try and touch the bases. But the first thing I want to talk about is the SEL book rubric. Keep losing the mouse. Which is what I held up before. So it comes out on a full sheet of paper like this. Full sheet of paper, forgot about the mic. And it's a scoring system. So if you've used a rubric in a classroom, or if you've been in a classroom where your teacher gave you a rubric, you would have seen something like this, where they circle the 2s, the 1s, or the 0s, depending on if you fulfilled that criteria. So I came up with qualitative criteria for each of the things, which was a little difficult at first, because I was I had all these standards, and they were all neatly written, but I was kind of like, OK, now how do I really make this useful to a teacher? So I thought that making it into a rubric would be more beneficial, because it's a very clear-cut, pass-or-fail kind of deal. So it goes through various things, such as providing coping strategies, making sure you have dynamic characters. And then I have a disclaimer that says, to ensure high quality, that it should be higher than 80% score, and that none of the boxes under 0 should be checked off. So if you're finding that, for example, the character only exhibits one characteristic, that would be an automatic fail for the book, and not ideal for SEL. I also have on the bottom yes or no boxes, because some of them didn't necessarily scale to scores, but were kind of just like you have it or you don't. So it also says that you should have all yeses for those. So in doing this, I went through an inventory and listed books that passed this rubric, because it's a starting point for educators and current and future educators to use. And it is coded by competency. My apologies, by anxiety, depression, stress, and self-esteem. So you see the little colored dots, and each book goes through and it's coded with which one it targets the most. So the first one is what it's mainly for, and then you go to the right and other additional skills that are also included. And so I have kindergarten to 2nd grade, and then a 3rd through 5th grade books. And all of these passed the rubric as high quality. And so I have it listed under standards and criteria as well. That kind of list is out, but you saw that on the rubric. The inventory, the checklist, is an interactive checklist that is similar to the rubric, but kind of just an aid and supplementary to it. And then the relation to NJ standards is similar. So you see it's coded by the competencies here. So self-awareness is the first one. On the far left, I write the SEL competency. In the middle, I say what the standard is. And on the right, I break it down into the very specific skill within the competency. So if self-awareness is the competency, the specific skill would be identifying emotions and having a growth mindset. So going back to the PowerPoint, I wanted to do this project to, one, promote SEL in the classroom. Oh, I went all the way through. Because I see how much of a benefit I could have had having this in the classroom, and I know that it could have an even further impact. And the idea is to promote and encourage successful, efficient, and effective implementation in the classroom. You're using an existing curriculum, and this allows that. So I wanted to help encourage to create emotionally and socially competent members of society that are also beneficial for our future generations. So I want to say a quick thank you to everybody that's here for coming to support me. My first reader, Dr. Rizzuto, Dean Mezzi, Dean Ross, Doris, and all my friends and family. It has been a long ride, but I'm very happy with where I ended up. I will take questions. Thank you. Yes.
So have you shared this with any of the teachers that you're working with and sort of shown it to them and seen whether they might want to actually incorporate it, or have you used it in the classroom?
So that is definitely the next step. I have been talking to other professors, and the next step in this process is to establish validity and reliability to the rubric and kind of to see the results, to see if the students are having a higher retention rate of those SEL skills. So I haven't yet. I mean, I've talked about it with them in the classroom, and they're all super for the idea. They love it. So they know about it, but I haven't tested it yet.
Is that your plan?
Yes, that is definitely my plan. I'm going for a master's in literacy, so the plan is to take it that step further.
How did you pick the books? Because you're saying you're creative. Is it your elementary background that you were familiar from seeing these books in the classroom, or was it some other experience, or was it Google searching? How'd you come across those specific books?
Yeah, so like I said, it was very difficult to find like an evidence-based list. So I was trying to fill that gap. So I was really going through highly rated books that were suggested for SEL online, and then running them through the rubric, because since there was no like evidence-based list, I was making it up myself. So I had to use number one, what I had access to, and two, I went with what was being recommended as SEL books. Yes?
When you were looking for books, did you find a lot of SEL books like in your list, or were you shocked that there were a lot of books that didn't really
I would say that there's a lot in the past maybe 5 years. There's a lot more being published now because people are identifying the need and publishing those books. I'm working on trying to find more books that are not necessarily designated as SEL, but still hit all those targets, because of course there's books out there. There's been books forever that people go through something and they deal with it. So I'm working on identifying those too. Most of the books in the list were written for SEL and specifically target certain things. So there's not an extensive inventory out there, but it does exist, especially in the past 5 years. Yes?
Just illustrate, what you're doing is you're finding children's books that if you read them to children, something happens, something good happens. So can you give us an example of that? How does that work? What type of book would be emotionally constructive or helpful to a particular child?
Sure. So one of the books on the list is called Nervous Ninja, and it's about this little ninja who's feeling very nervous, and one of the friends comes up and is like, hey, do you want some ice cream? And he's kind of like, what do you mean ice cream? Ice cream's not going to help this. But then the book goes on to use this metaphor of ice cream called calming cones, and each cone has ice cream scoop had a coping mechanism on it. So I actually did a lesson plan to go along with that to have the teacher's ice cream parlor. So the students would read the book, they would identify what coping mechanisms the ninja used, and then they would take it outside to their life and see what coping mechanisms that the book laid out that maybe that they could use. And then the final step was a writing prompt of a reflective essay of a time that maybe they used said coping mechanisms, or a time that they could have. So it kind of takes the skills that the character uses, pulls it outside the important part is that the teacher can connect it to them and bring it outside of the book into their real world, because that's really where the learning comes into play. So the book serves as the beginning and the stepping stones into the activities that the teacher can create.
And what age group are you talking?
That lesson was for a 4th grade class.
So last question. Member two.
Once this is tested, are you planning on working maybe with libraries as well? I'm thinking about how they might be able also to have some kind of designation or special displays or work with parents, right?
Right.
If parents come into the library, they be specifically looking for, for material that could help their children.
Right. I think that once validity and reliability is established to the rubric, there could definitely be a section within a library that all the books fit the criteria. I mean, that would be a dream if I could get that far, and that is definitely the goal. But I think that's definitely where this could go, of having a designated area in a library that parents could pull out books, and especially if it's organized.
Mary, thank you so much. So you all have been a fabulous audience, so thank you for that, and thank you for all the questions. Before we break, just a reminder that there are some snacks in that room over there, and we're going to pick back up at, I think, 1:50, something like that. But before we leave, I just want to give another round of applause to our amazing presenters. I hope that what they've presented today, and these were all creative capstones, but all based on hard-earned data that they were looking at and literature that they were looking at, but really just amazing breadth and depth of the work that they did. So another round of applause for our presenters, please. Yeah. All right. Thank you.